Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. This insightful saying by Leo Tolstoy is a valuable reminder for all of us to reflect inwardly. The renowned 19th century Russian author suggested that we ask ourselves what God really wants us to do. As Leo Tolstoy said, "In the name of God, stop a moment, cease your work, look around you." A novel by Tolstoy is not a work of art, but a piece of life, stated Matthew Arnold, a 19th century British poet and critic. In addition to his renowned epic novels, Leo Tolstoy wrote essays and letters that conveyed the spiritual truths he came to realize in life. Along with adopting and promoting the vegetarian diet, he became deeply interested in spirituality and living by the ethical teachings of Christ. The concepts he conveyed through his writings about peace and the fulfillment of God's will greatly influenced 20th century leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Supreme Master Ching Hai spoke about the uplifting nature of Leo Tolstoy's work during a group meditation session with our association members in July 1997 in Los Angeles, USA.
Because Tolstoy was a practitioner, That's why when you read his story, almost a story about spirituality, about God, and very happy, very positive. It's very good to read him, to read his book. You try. If you haven't, you try. You can read more, Such thing is very good for you.
We would like to share with you an insightful excerpt from Volume 2 of The Pathway of Life, called The Spoken Word. The Spoken Word. Words are expressions of thought and may serve to unite people or to separate them. Therefore, they must be handled cautiously. Great is the word. By a word we can bring people into union. By a word we can sever their union. By a word we can serve love. And likewise by a word we can serve enmity and hatred. Beware of the word that separates people or serves enmity and hatred. Words are expressions of thought, and thought is a manifestation of divine power. Therefore, the word must correspond with that which it expresses. It can be indifferent, but it must not be an expression of evil. Man is the carrier of God. He can express the consciousness of his divinity by a word. How then should he not be careful in the use of a word? Time passes, but the spoken word remains. If you have time to think before beginning to speak, think, is it worthwhile to speak? Is it necessary to speak? Will you not injure someone by speaking that which you would speak? And mostly it will happen that if you first think, you will not commence to speak. First think, then speak. But stop before someone says, enough. Man is higher than an animal in his capacity of speech, but he is lower than the animal when gabbling at haphazard. After a lengthy conversation, try to remember all that has been said, and you will wonder how banal, futile, and frequently evil was much that was said. Listen and be attentive, but say little. Never speak unless asked, but if asked, answer briefly. Nor be ashamed if you must admit that you do not know the thing you are questioned about. If you would pass as well informed, learn to question rationally, to listen attentively, to answer calmly, and to cease speaking when there is nothing left to say. Praise not, judge not, and dispute not. Listen to the speech of the learned man with attention. Though his actions may not be in accord with his teaching, man must have instruction, though the instruction be an inscription on the wall. There is a useful brief phrase, I know not. Teach your tongue to use it frequently. There is an ancient saying, say nothing evil of the dead. How unfair it is. It ought to be instead, say nothing evil of the living. How much sorrow would not this rule remove from the world? Why say nothing evil of the dead? In our world, it is accustomed to render only exaggerated praise. In other words, to tell only falsehoods about the dead in obituaries and memorial observances. Such specious praise is harmful because it wipes out in the minds of the people the distinction between good and evil. With what shall we compare the tongue in the mouth of man? It is the key to the treasure house. When the door is locked, no one can tell whether behind it are precious stones or heaps of useless rubbish. While wise men teach us that silence is useful, free speech is likewise needful, only at the proper time. We sin by words both if we are silent when we ought to speak, and if we speak when we ought to be silent. When you are angry, be silent. If you know how people should live and mean well with them, you will tell them, and you will do so in such a manner that they trust your words. In order that they may trust you and understand you, you must express your thoughts without irritation or anger, but calmly and kindly. If you would convey some truth to your listener, the main thing is not to be irritated and not to use an unkind or offensive word. The unspoken word is golden. Not to think first before speaking is advisable only when you feel yourself to be calm, kindly and loving. But if you are restless and irritated, take care that you do not sin in word. If you cannot instantly still your wrath, restrain your tongue, be silent, and you will regain your calmness. Take care that in a discussion your words be gentle, your arguments firm. Endeavor not to irritate your adversary, but to convince him. As soon as we feel anger in an argument, we are arguing not for the sake of truth, but for our own sake. Do not quarrel. The beginning of a quarrel is like water seeping through a dam. The moment it breaks through, it cannot be restrained, and every quarrel is provoked and kept alive by words. Quarrel convinces nobody, it merely separates and exasperates. What a nail is to a hammer, even so, the quarrel is to human opinions. Opinions that had been a little shaky are driven firmly into a man's head after a quarrel, as nails are driven in down to their head by a hammer. Truth is lost sight of in quarrels. He who is wiser stops the quarrel. You may listen to quarrels, but do not participate therein. May the Lord preserve you from quick temper and hot-headedness, even in their slightest manifestation. Anger is always out of place, and most of all in a righteous matter, because it obscures it and clouds it. The best answer to a madman is silence. Every word of retort will rebound from the madman upon your own head. To reply to insult with insult is like throwing sticks into a fire.
Compassion for animals is something that every child has naturally, but they are lured away from these instincts by society's nasty habits. Dan Matthews, vegan.
Noble viewers, it's been a pleasure to have your company for today's words of wisdom.